I always appreciate, you know, my dad just giving me the opportunity, just being willing to pass the ball to me. You know, that means something as a son when your dad's willing to pass the ball to you. So I really appreciate that. And it's just the way he works real fast, so he's moving real fast all of the time. And Monday, actually it was Tuesday, I'm sitting in the office upstairs. Tuesday's his big meeting day. And he comes into the office and he's like, "Hey son, men's conference on Saturday, you're aware?" I said, "Yeah, of course I'm aware." He said, "Well, you've got 20 minutes. And then he closed the door and walked out, and I was like, but that's how dad will do you. They throw you in that fire. But I appreciate that he's willing to do that. 2006, I'm with the San Diego Chargers in training camp. And a week goes by in training camp, and after that week, you've already been through 16 practices, and you're tired, weary, beaten, bruised, bandaged up. It's that time of training camp where you can't see the light at the end of the tunnel because you still have another week before you play your first preseason game. So you're hitting the same people, and you know you have another 16 practices before you get to show off on the field. So we're kind of down, and that's the point of training camp where guys start talking about retirement and the whole deal. It's time for me to get out of here. But we also had one of the most motivating coaches of all time. And I remember one morning after a week went by, we were in meetings, 7 a.m. In training camp, you start at 6 a.m., you don't get back to your room till about 9 p.m. with 2 practices and meetings in the middle. But I remember this one early morning meeting. We were mumbling with each other, just kind of talking, and just kind of down and tired, just making it. And then the head coach enters the room. All goes quiet because the elephant has just entered the room. He goes by the name of Marty Schottenheimer, one of the greatest motivating coaches of all time, a genius. And this day he came into the meeting and he just began to pace up and down. For about 3 minutes, he just walked and he looked, and he had a grimace on his face, as to look right through us just to see what we were thinking. He was just kind of measuring us up. And he just stared and he paced, and he stared and he paced, and then he began to speak. He said, "Men, I did not just cast the net and hope that the good players that I need would fall into it to help me win a Super Bowl this season. You have been hand-selected, hand-picked, cherry-picked, chosen to be here by none other than myself. And I'm Marty Schottenheimer. I don't make mistakes with who I choose. You have been chosen for a specific position because you have a specific skill that I think will help us win a championship and get to our destiny in 2006. There's no better time than right now here with the San Diego Chargers. But in order to do that, even though I've constructed everything for success, you have to maintain the integrity of the uniform that you wear. If you don't maintain the integrity of that uniform, it doesn't matter that I'm Marty Schottenheimer and I've given you all these coaches and I've given you this playbook for success. All is null and void if you don't go out on the field and maintain your uniform's integrity. That's what you have to do. The time is right now for greatness. And there's no other time than right now because I've constructed it for your success. Now, what you need to do is stand up, go to the locker room and put on your helmet, strap on your pads, and meet me on the 50-yard line because the time is right now. I'm feeling that right now. Don't nobody walk on this stage right now. You might get hit. But one of the things that I thought about years later, that's a speech that you never forget. But one of the things that I thought about years later is, hasn't God said the same thing to me? He said, "I foreknew you and predestined you to be conformed to the image of my son so that he may be the firstborn of many brethren." Those who have been predestined have also been called. Those who have been called have also been justified. Those who have been justified have also been glorified. So then what then can you say if God is for you? Who can be against you? And I realized at that moment that I have been called, and you have been called, and your sons have been called to be great. And God called us for a specific position because he gave each and every one of us a specific skill for success. And he's God. He doesn't make mistakes on who he chooses. He did not just cast the net. He chose specifically. But we have to maintain the integrity of the uniform that he gave us. If we don't maintain the integrity of that uniform, it doesn't matter that he's constructed greatness, we won't see it. It says in Genesis 17, chapter 17, verse 1, God was talking to Abraham at the age of 99 years old. And he told Abraham, I want to see you walk blameless before me, and then I will establish my covenant. My covenant is there. I will establish it, but I want to watch you first. A lot of us are waiting on God, and God is saying, wait a minute, I'm waiting on you. I want to see you maintain the uniform's integrity first, and then we can talk about moving forward to greatness. How many of us have the uniform of salvation, but we never get on the field of sanctification? Moving forward and becoming all that God has called us to become and all that he has created us to be. Greatness ensues, and the time is now. That sounds good. The speech was good. I'll never forget what Marty said, and the Holy Spirit turned it into something that's spoken to my life. But for me, greatness and destiny and all of those different things, sometimes I'm scared of it and I fear it. Me personally, if I can be real for a second. This very stage scares me because it's his stage, and I'm his son. And it's an intimidating thing to stand on this stage. Being my dad's son, from the outside looking in, Tony Evans and the family, the great kingdom life and all of that kind of stuff, but sometimes that stuff is scary. Sometimes I have a fear that rolls on the inside that I know is the enemy, but I still feel it because I'm human. And that fear is in, some people have started to walk to me and tell me, hey, I feel it in my spirit. I'm telling you, you're going to be the next pastor of this church. And I say, what church? You have lost your mind. Keep that to yourself. It's Tony Evans' church. To me, that comparison is like Michael Jordan's son is about to try out for the Bulls. That doesn't quite work. It doesn't quite work. Some of the things that make Tony Evans great, some of those things I just don't have as a son. And it's scary because I watch him every day. But I can't force myself to have those things because I'm not him. One of those things is he's an intellectual. He's up here. Go check his library out. You'll fall out. He reads a book a week, nonstop, a book a week from cover to cover. Next book. He's read most of the books that are in his library. I read 2 pages and my eyes are watering. I don't have that. I'm not a formal learner. He's in meetings all day, making something out of nothing. On Tuesdays, he's in meetings from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. all day, just meeting with people, staying attentive, going and going and going and going and going. I'm in a meeting 5 minutes, and I'm thinking about Puff the Magic Dragon. I just don't have some of those same things that made him great, but the word of the Lord stays the same for me too. And that's what I have to believe through my fear. That the word of the Lord stays the same for every individual in this room, despite your fear and your past and all those other things that you may be dealing with. The word of the Lord is for you too. And it's something that we have to believe. Every day I just keep putting one foot out in front of the other. And when I look down sometimes, all I see is an abyss. I don't know what this foot is going to land on. But because I'm trying to walk in his will, it just seems like the Lord slides something solid for me to land on. It's called walking by faith. The assurance of things hoped for and the conviction of things not seen. Even through my fear. Sometimes God will allow you to walk on the very things that hold you in bondage to get to your destiny. And that's what I'm learning right now in my life as a son, as a 30-year-old who's still trying to figure it out and trying to stand on his word, knowing his word because you were fed it every night for dinner. But truly being able to apply the word in spite of your feelings. We're going to leave here today as kingdom men feeling it and ready to apply it. But you know the time has come for you to apply it when you feel like not applying it. That's the time when the game has begun. One of my favorite movies is X-Men. One of my favorite characters in X-Men is a character by the name of Magneto. I like villains. He could take metal and manipulate it and do whatever he wants with it, but in this one movie, he was in a jail cell that was hovering over nothingness because he can float and do all these other things. And so they had him in a jail cell that was hovering over a deep, dark abyss. And then 100 yards from the jail cell was the mainland. Well, one of his colleagues came to save him and tried to break him out and all of those different things, and he was able to open the door, but then he looked down and realized that if he took another step, he was going to fall. But he saw his destination, which was the mainland. So what he did was take iron from the jail that was holding him captive and putting it underneath his feet, and he would step on it. And he would take more iron and step on it, and take more iron and step on it until he got to his destiny. He was using the very thing that held him captive to get to his destination. And sometimes with our fear, sometimes with our past, sometimes without having a father, sometimes without having a blueprint, if we just believe the word and start applying that, God can put those very things that are holding us in our jail cell underneath our feet so that we can walk towards our destination. And these are just personal things. These are just things that I'm learning as I read the Bible and the Holy Spirit draws stuff off the page for me as I just walk this walk in my personal life. In Genesis 18:19, the Lord is talking to Abraham, and he said, you have been chosen to lead your family after me so that I can fulfill my promise. Well, what was the promise to Abraham? I'm going to make a great nation. Well, that comes through a family. So he's telling Abraham to lead your family after me so that I can do what I said I was going to do. But you have to start by leading your family. One of the things that's great that God has blessed me with is a father that leads his family. We sit around the table every single night. Every single night we sat around that table, and he would just feed us a plate of wisdom. And even though we were missing the Cosby Show because of that plate of wisdom, I realize now that I'm older how much that means to have a dad that sits with his sons and daughters, and he gives him what he learned from his dad. You see, I don't see Two Daddy a lot. We call him Two Daddy, my dad's dad. I don't see Two Daddy a lot. But my mind is just like his because Two Daddy created a disciple, and my dad created a disciple. And now I hold that baton tight so that I can hand it to my son. What Two Daddy had to do was pick it up off the ground, though, because he was the first. His father was around, but he wasn't saved. He got saved at the end of his life. So my dad grew up in a non-Christian home. Two guys that I never met witnessed to Two Daddy that I'll never see. I don't know if they're here. I don't know if they're not alive anymore. I don't know where they are. But those two guys that I never knew and never will know, those kingdom men that witnessed to my father, I wish they could see what doing one thing that God tells you to do, how that can change the course of generations. And now Two Dad is getting older, 83 years old. It's hard for me to see him walk with a cane now and not get around the same as I've always been able to see. And now, you know, what hurts me, they talked to me just yesterday in a meeting, and they said, as I watched that and then watched my father, they said, Jonathan, what is the most exciting thing for you right now as it relates to working with your father in ministry? I said, I feel sorry for my siblings because I get to spend more time with them than they do. I love being by his side and eating off his plate. I love it, and I'm glad that I had the opportunity to do it. And then they said, what is the worst thing about working with your father in ministry? I said, I really don't like it when he says, son, this is my last third of ministry. I'm 62 years old now. And at some point, it has to come to a close. And then that's when the Holy Spirit told me, it's not coming to a close because you bear his name and you're just getting started. Those who he foreknew, he also predestined to be conformed to the image of his Son, so that he may be the firstborn of many brethren. Those that he predestined, he also called. Those that he called, he also justified. And those that he justified, he also glorified. So what then can you say? If God is for you, who can be against you?